All right, just so you know, I sent you all an email this morning. This is it, and it has hyperlinks to a bunch of, rather than give you all this stuff, because it's like half a gig. So what I did was I just threw the URLs out there for it. And if you're interested, you know, if you're looking this this summer, all right, and you want to get a head start, fine. If you don't, you're not going to. This is the document we've been working on. But I gave it to you kind of in a way that I would recommend that you look at the stuff. There's a short article. It's called Model View Controller Explained with Legos. All right. And then you go into this. This guy has got a really good website. It's called raywenderlich.com. And he writes on Android stuff. He writes on iOS stuff. He writes on a lot of computer stuff, period. And he's just really good. Here's the thing. I actually grabbed a couple things from Apple. All right. Now, the stuff in here, they talk about Model View Controller. When you get into it a bit, it talks about how it's used in Apple. That wouldn't make much sense to you. But the actual talk about what Model View Controller is, it's pretty good. This is a really long article. It's 65 pages. Most asked ASP.NET MVC interview questions and answers. You know, what is MVC? You know, it starts with nothing and it goes to a really fairly high level. Then there's a couple more. One from Guru99.com, which is a site I use because they've got a lot of really good tutorials. This one, you know, tutorial for beginners, okay, and it's very well done. And then this one, which is from Tutorials Teacher on MVC tutorials. So like I said, there's a lot of really good articles out there. With the stuff that we did yesterday, if it didn't make any sense to you whatsoever, then I would say, you know, don't key in it, don't do anything, just watch. Because the idea, again, is just to introduce you to some of this functionality. I don't expect it to make a whole heck of a lot of sense. All right? And we'll go back and we'll end up redoing a lot of this. But I thought to myself, okay, what would you rather do? Listen to me lecture on a few chapters in the book or actually show you a project? And I figured it would make more sense to show you a project so you could see the kind of thing that you were getting yourselves into. All right? For those of you who yesterday there were 2 or 3 of you, I think 3 of you in here, that were not able to bring up ASP.NET. All right? And if you were not able to, what you have to do, and you'll have to Google this, is you'll have to bring up the Visual Studio installer. All right? You'll have to get to the installer page because evidently when you installed, you didn't click the thing for ASP.NET. Now, you could turn around and say, well, you didn't tell us to. And if I didn't, then I'm sorry. All right? But that would be what you would have to do, is you'd have to go and Google Visual Studio installer. You'd have to find the installer for Visual Studio 2017 Community Edition, and then you'd have to go look for the ASP.NET option. All right? So what we did last time, okay, we came in here and we started talking about the different things that, you know, that were involved in this whole process. And if you look here, where is it? I may not even have it up anymore. All right. But we started to go through the different stuff that was in here. And we were 20, 30 pages in. I don't know. I don't really care. All right. But the idea is what we did, what we looked at first was kind of an overview. Sometimes they call it like a 35,000 foot view, where we were looking down at Model View Controller to see what was involved. That was chapter or lesson or unit 1. Then we went in and we created an actual controller. It was kind of a garbage controller because it was just meant to show you some of the stuff that's in here. It was called Hello World Controller. And then in the third lesson or unit, we started to build a view that went along with that controller. Remember, when you talk MVC, Model View Controller, there are three components. The model, which we're going to actually look at today, which either, there's three ways that you can build a model. I'm not trying to confuse you. I don't even want to talk about all of them. You can create the code and then create the database from the code. You can create the database and you can create the code from the database. You can do it either way. And there's yet a third way. It's not even worth getting into. But the model part represents your data. Normally, your data will come from a database. It doesn't always, but if I had to guess, I would say that probably 95 to 99% of the time, the data comes from a database. And there's all sorts of different kinds of databases. You can make this stuff work. It doesn't have to be an SQL Server database. It can be MySQL. It can be all sorts of other kinds of databases. All right. Then we started to look at the view part. The view is what the end user sees. The model and the view never talk directly to one another. All right. They both do all of their conversation through the controller. So the model represents the data. The view represents what the user sees. All right. And what happens is somebody goes, so let's say, for example, I decide I'm going to go out to Amazon and buy something. Is Amazon done through Model View Controller? I don't know. But if it is, I wouldn't be surprised. So I go in and I type in Amazon.com, which gets me to Amazon's website. Then I decide that what I want to do is I want to order a book. So probably what's going to happen is the main server at Amazon is going to call some kind of a book controller. All right. So then I go into books and I put in, books on ASP.NET MVC5. So boom, it goes out and it finds a database server. That's where the model stuff is. And it returns to me all those books that are available. What it returns to me is the view. Now, I'm not saying that that makes sense, but to be honest with you, it kind of should. Because that's pretty much what happens when you go out to any kind of an e-commerce website, whether they are using Model View Controller or whether they're not. All right. And again, next, the plan is for fall is we'll build two of these. The first one we'll build, you'll actually have the code. I'm not sure if the code will work or not. But the book that we have, the author gives you the code. And we'll do what we can to make sure that it works. What I don't like about what the author has is the database that the author has is very small. All right, there aren't very many items in there. So hopefully this summer, if I have the time, I'll put some more stuff in there. All right, and then we're also going to build our own Model View Controller website. All right. I can't think of a better way to at least hopefully prepare you for all this. All right. So we started to go through here. We went through, we created a view, if you remember, and I want to mention something about this. This may or may not make sense to you, but I want you to hear the terminology. All right. So if you look up on the screen here, and if I go under this shared folder that you see right here, you don't have to bring it up, but if you look under it, you'll notice there's a layout, a login partial, an error, a lockout, and a view start. All right, we'll talk about all of them next semester, but the key one right now is this layout file. And this layout file, which is the one here, you may or may not remember from yesterday, but I changed this. That said application name. When we ran the program, that's actually what showed on that black menu bar was the words application name. It now says MVC movie. All right, is that big a thing? No. But the point is, this file, this underscore layout.cshtml is a file that by default, it's a layout file that every single view shares. They don't have to share it, but normally they do. And the reason for that is that means that the look and feel of every view will be the same. Usually that's what you want. All right. Again, I think, and I'm very biased, this is a really good tutorial. That's the good news. The bad news is it was written over the years 2013, 2014, and 2015, which means it's antiquated. All right? And since it's antiquated, you don't always do everything the way it's done in this tutorial. And once you do something, you have no guarantee it's going to look exactly like it does in this tutorial. That's just the way it is. All right? So we came in here and we did make this change. Remember, any file that ends like this, any file that ends with .cshtml, that is an HTML file which can contain C# code. Any file that ends with that particular extension means it's what's called a razor file. All right, they named it razor code. I don't know why. There could be a story behind it. Don't really care. All right. So we went in there and we did this. We made that change. We ran it, and you saw this. Now, is that big a thing? Not at all. All right. But they just wanted to show you how you can make changes and immediately see an effect after you make a change on the system. So this was when we came in at the end and we changed this from application name to MVC movie, and from the word, I think it was home, to the word movies. All right. Then when we ran it, it looked like this. The key takeaways on here, there are two of them. After we made those changes, if you look on the screen, this said MVC movie regardless of which page we were on. And up in our tab, it had about or contact or whatever dash movie app. All right. So there's a bunch of stuff in here. I mean, am I skipping stuff? Of course I am. There's no way in heck I could go over everything in a week. You're taking a class that's an entire semester. All right? And I've told you this before. It's up to you how you do this. All right? But I would recommend, however you're going to get the book, that you get the book as soon as possible. And I wouldn't care if you spent 10 minutes a week, but just page through and look at this stuff. I've said this to you before. This isn't a warning. This isn't a threat. Most people, when they come into this program, when I talk to them, they like the class in the first semester. They like creating websites. They like, wow, I'm able to do this stuff. Then they kind of think we almost take a step backwards in the second semester, the one you're in. Man, first semester was fun. This is code. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, definitely the driest class is the one next semester. All right. There are ways I wish we could change this class. But again, I'm fighting kind of a losing battle. Me against the instructors that are at the St. Louis campus. I wish the focus of this class was changed. They don't want to change it. All right. We're going to talk again at the end of the semester. I'm going over to St. Louis for a couple days, and we're going to talk some more. We'll see. What would I change it to? Well, yeah, I would change the focus. You can teach Model View Controller, which is a very important concept. I think that teaching it using ASP.NET is about the hardest way to teach it to people. If it was up to me, and I've already suggested this to them, instead of having our focus be on ASP.NET, it would be on PHP, all right, which is another language. But I think it's easier to use, and it's easier to demonstrate, and I think it's being used as much as ASP.NET. What I've suggested to them is that the first semester stay the way it is. The second semester, instead of being this class right here that you're in right now would move to the third semester, and in the second semester we would either have a PHP class or we would have a Python class. All right? It hasn't been met with much approval on their end. So. All right. Now, if you look up on the screen here, because you've actually seen this before, but we haven't talked about it at all, and that is there is a special thing, can't describe it any better than that, even though that's not a good description, that you can use in ASP.NET that's called a view bank. What's a view bank? All right. If you could imagine, you know, maybe some of you in here, I've done it because my wife likes to, maybe some of you in here have gone to a garage sale at some time in your life. All right? And sometimes if you go to a garage sale, if it's 3 days long, if it's a Thursday, a Friday, and a Saturday, when you get to Saturday, what they'll do is they'll say, they'll have a bunch of bags there. Anything you can fit into this bag for $5. Something like that. It's kind of what a view bag is. You can put anything that your program needs inside of the view bag and do virtually anything you want to do with it. But just kind of like that bag that you'd use for a garage sale, you know, I'm not going to be able to sit there and put a television inside of a grocery bag. The view bag is used for very small things that you want to be able to save, manipulate, etc. Things like a title. All right, but you wouldn't put a database in a view bag. It's too big, it's too complex. All right. So they do go through some of that stuff in here. All right. So this pretty much is where we are right there, right now. Okay, and they ask you to go to Hello World. So I want to go and double check and make sure that indeed that's where we are. I do want you to understand, okay, I do want you to understand that what we're looking at in here right now, this is running on a server that is built into Visual Studio. This actually is a server application. Another thing you may or may not have understood, when we were working with PHPMyAdmin, that was a server application. So you actually are now working, or at least looking, at your second server application this semester. All right? And why is that important? Because everything we did in the first semester, all of the HTML, all of the CSS, all of the JavaScript, all of the jQuery, all of the Bootstrap, all of that stuff, that was all client side. That was set up for your machine and your machine only. In an ideal world, and this is what we're going to attempt to do in fall, is we're going to attempt to build 2 ASP.NET projects and then take them and put them out on Microsoft Azure where anyone can look at them. That's going to take and make you, all right, it's going to take and make you a much more marketable person, all right? Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I talked to my second-year people about this, and every one of them to a person, all the people who took the class, they all told me one thing I learned from this class is I never want to do that for a living. I'd never want to be an ASP.NET programmer. And I'm like, why? Because it's too hard. All right. Well, that may or may not be true. All right. But they've got the skills that if they ever wanted to be one, they could. All right. Now I'm looking in here, and just so you know, This says my movie list, so they did make a change. I gotta find out where they made that change. So I can try to put the same thing in here. There it is. Okay, so they want the hello world. The hello world index file to change to this. So let me see if I can change mine. Stop the run here. There's the hello world. There's the index. Change that to this. Don't worry, it'll look ugly for a minute. All right, and then we'll try to run it again and see if now it looks the way that it's supposed to look. I will tell you while I'm waiting for this to come up, just so you know, everything that I have been given has now been graded. All right. I went and spent a lot of yesterday afternoon. It's all been graded. It's all been put in there. If you look at the stuff, because many of you went over and above what you had to do for the database assignment, if you're like, why didn't I get more points? Then come talk to me. All right. And I'll let you know. I tried to look at everything that was in there and give you points accordingly. All right. Everyone who has turned in that first assignment that just had the 2 buttons on it, the customers and the orders, everyone who's turned that in has gotten 50 out of 50. Everybody. For the second assignment, I'd say about half the people who have turned it in have gotten 100 out of 100 because they did the customer stuff, and probably 4 or 5 people have got 200 out of 100, or somewhere between 100 and 200 because they also added the order stuff. All right, but I will tell you, I keep telling Charles that I say this. All right, if you look at your grade and your grade is either a D or an F, you have until 1 week from tomorrow to turn me in a boatload of stuff to lift that grade up. All right, and if you don't, you're not going to be here next semester. That's not a threat. People are like, well, are you threatening us? No, I don't have the power to threaten you. I don't want to threaten you. But you're not allowed to register for the next class if your grade is a D or an F. That's not my rule. That's a ranking rule. Right? Okay, so I made that change. It now says my movie list. Hello from the view template. All right. And all it was we changed the title to movie list. Okay, and the H2 tag. And that's what it looks like right here. All right. Now, they go through a lot of stuff. If nothing else, if you ever take the time to go back and look at this tutorial, there's a heck of a lot to learn in here. It's very well written. It's very well done. That's why I decided to show you this one. All right. Notice they give you a best practice here. I'm on page 30. I'm not going to read it to you, but look, it's bolded and it's now in blue up on the screen. I mentioned this to you before. Every one of these things should have its own job. The controller should make sure that it talks to the model and it talks to the view. The view should present information to the user. The model should hold data and what are called business rules. All right? As it says right there, a view should never perform logic. A view is a stupid piece of software. All right? But there are no MVC cops. So if you decide you're going to break these rules and you're going to do it the way you want to, there's no one stopping you from doing it. You can make your application work and work just fine. But it's going to be harder when you have to change it. The reason that you separate these things into a model and a view and a controller, the reason that you separate them is the same reason that we separate HTML from CSS from JavaScript. Though it just like that, it's called separation of concerns. So you can, if you've ever heard of plug and play, the idea is I could grab a view from one program and conceivably stick it into another program. All right, that may not sound like that big a thing, But if you're working for a company, that can be an unbelievably big thing. All right. Now, if we go through, I'm not going to do this, but if we go through, please look at this right here. All right. We looked at this before, and I want to say it to you one last time. If you look at the line in blue up on the screen. What this says is our welcome routine is going to expect there to be two parameters passed in. A string that refers to someone's name, and an integer which refers to a number of times something is going to happen. If we don't pass in a name, what gets passed in automatically is the empty string. It's just the way it works. Now, the way this is written, if we don't pass in an integer for number of times, it automatically defaults to 1. We went over that a little bit yesterday, but I just want to make sure you hear that. All right? So the next thing they do is they have you go in and build another CSHTML page, and that CSHTML page is going to be called welcome.cshtml. What does that mean? That means if you look on the screen here, if I go to my Hello World controller, we already built this. We did this last time, but we didn't do anything with this one. So right now, if you bring up the welcome page, it's going to say, so if I say bring it up and I say Jeff, and for a number of times I say 6, it'll say hello Jeff, num times equals 6. Big deal. So they want us to come in here and we want to create a view for this. So I'm going to right mouse click here, choose add view, and notice it defaults to the word welcome. Again, this is one of those times, if you look at that handout that I gave you, it doesn't look like this, because that's the way it looked back when they started with this, but they've upped their game, so to speak, to try to make it easier to use. So we do all this stuff. We click add. We come in there and we get this. Now what we just created was this file right here, welcome.cshtml. That's the file that we created. All right? And they give us the code in here that they want us to put in there. So I'm going to put it in, and then I'm going to come back and talk about what it is. Oops, I don't want to do that. All right. Now, you're all smart people in here. You should all understand what this is going to do. It's a for loop. You've gone through loops. We've looked at these in a lot of detail. You're going to put a value in there for a number of times. If I put 1,000,000 in there, it's going to literally print out this message, hello Jeff, num times equal 1,000,000, 1,000,000 times. So if you're going to run it, don't put in 1,000,000. But if I put in 100, it'll print it out 100 times. All right? So what I should be able to do, hopefully I didn't leave anything out, but I should be able to right now save this, now go over into my views and run this welcome page. We'll find out. If there's something it doesn't like, I'll know it real fast. Okay, so it's got nothing in there. So what if I come through here and I say, well, let's see if we can do it like this. I don't know if it'll work or not. Jeff and 25. Okay, no, doesn't like that. All right. So we'll say welcome, question mark, name equals Jeff, ampersand, num times equal 25. Well, I thought it wouldn't. Okay, it's still going to the default. I must not have changed something. All right. What I thought it was going to say was, hello, Jeff. Maybe it's got to be ID. I don't know. Nope. So there's something it doesn't like in here. So there's something I missed. But the bottom line is this. What this is designed to do is to print out a hello message or a welcome message, however many times you tell it to be printed out. All right? I'm sure I missed something a little earlier, and that's why it's not showing. It's no big thing one way or the other. I don't care. Like I said, this part of this article where they go over the stuff with this hello controller, it's just to bring you up to speed. It's just to get you used to using it. All right? Okay. So that's what's supposed to happen. It'll say hello, I guess, with just your name in there, and it'll say it that many times. I'm going to try using, yeah. So welcome, question mark, names. Well, that's what I put in. So I must have left something out. All right. This is what's next. This is the big thing so far. You look up on the screen here. It says adding a model. And again, what the model has in it, this is very short. It's about 4 or 5 pages. Then we'll take a break. All right. The model represents the database. So if you look up on the screen here, please. I'm going to go back, but I want you to see this. We're going to create a model in just a second. Please look up on the screen. This represents a table. The table will have 5 fields in it. ID, title, release date, genre, and price. That should make sense to everybody. What will happen eventually is we'll do a little bit of magic, so to speak, a little sleight of hand, and it'll be created for us automatically. All right? But I want to go over what they say here. I don't want to read a bit to you. But if you look on the screen, this right here is part of the key to it. And it's something that's called the EF, or the Entity Framework. What it does, just keeping it simple, is it allows you to write classes that can be converted into databases. Or it allows you to write databases that it'll create into classes. All right, and those 2 ways that you do that, you can do what's called database first, where you write the database, and then it creates the code, or you can do what we're doing here, which is called code first, where we're writing the code, and we're going to create a database after it. When you do this, whether you do code first, or whether you do database first, it's going to create an actual picture that's called a model. So a third way that you can create this stuff is by what's called model first. We'll look at all of that stuff come fall. All right. Hopefully one thing that you're starting to see is come fall, I mentioned this to you before, and those of you who struggle on written tests should be happy as heck about this. You may have, there's 27 chapters in the book. I'm going to talk to Mr. Smith when I go to the St. Louis campus. But if he says, Jeff, I'm giving 27 tests, that's what you're getting. But every one of those you'll get, and you'll get up to a week to work on it. And it's all going to be questions and stuff right out of the book. It won't be where you have to study, and I'm going to give you a study guide, and you have a test on it the next day. You won't have any of that stuff. You won't have that next semester. You won't have that in the last semester. Your days of getting those tests right out of the book like we've had, basically, they're all done. All right. So the next thing we're supposed to do is create our model. To create our model, we go to the models folder, we right mouse click, and we choose class. So to show you, and we're going to call it movie. So I go over here to models, which right now has account view model, identity model, and manage view model. It's got a bunch of predefined things for that login and register that we did at the beginning that you saw yesterday. So I'm going to right mouse click on views. I'm going to choose add, and a model rather is just a class. It's not views. I want to right click on models and choose add. Now notice I can add a bunch of different stuff here. So I right mouse clicked on models and chose add. I want to go down to the very bottom, right there, and choose class. And it says, what do you want to call your class? I want to call my class movie, M-O-V-I-E, because every single thing that's in here is going to represent a single movie. All right? So I go back to here, and it says this is what we're supposed to add. These lines that are right here. This should look familiar to you. What do I mean? You created classes in chapters 9 and 10 of your book, and you use get set. So you've seen this stuff already. All right, so I'm going to right mouse click on this, choose copy, go back to my code, and throw it right into my class. There it is. Now nothing magic happened, except I just put in 5 members of my class. All right. So it says we're going to use this movie class to represent movies in a database. So each movie will have its own ID, will have its own title, will have its own release date, will have its own genre, and will have its own price. All right. So it says in order to use this, we need to install what's called the Entity Framework NuGet package. Do I expect you to understand a bit of that? No. But the bottom line is, if I want to grab something that already exists and is available to me in here, I can add it. So I want to show you how we add that. It's not difficult. I come up to the top here and I right mouse click on the name of my project, which is MVC Movie. So I right mouse clicked on it. I go about halfway down and it says Manage NuGet Packages. And you see this. It's like, well, what the heck is all that? All right. These are different pieces of software that Microsoft makes available to me. The piece of software that I want to use right now, if you look on the screen, is the Entity Framework. So I click right there. All right. And you can see it's already installed on mine because I already did that. Yours probably will just hit the install button will not be highlighted. So you can click on it. I'm not going to click now because that would uninstall it. All right. So I've already got it available to me. We are going to end up using that NuGet Package Manager quite a bit. All right. So far, we've added this. All right. Now I'm going to come in and I'm going to add another class inside of here. And when I do, I'm guessing at least, after I do this, I'm going to get an error. So I'll show you how to fix the error. We're almost ready for the break. All right. I don't need this anymore, so I can go back to my movies. And I'm going to hit enter a couple times and paste that in. All right. Doesn't paste in very pretty. You can see I'm getting the errors. We're going to fix those errors literally in a matter of seconds. All right. The system does not have any idea what DB context means. So it's giving me an error. When this happens, please look up on the screen, because this is going to happen to you a lot next semester. You take your mouse and you put it on here. You get the little bulb. You click that, and it says, to do this, you need this using statement. So I click here. It adds the using statement right there using system.data.entity, and lo and behold, my errors are gone. That's going to happen a lot next semester as you go and add things. All right? And all we added was this using statement which said, hey, we want to be able to use the stuff that's in this library, this system.data.entity. And one of the things that's in that library is DB context. That's why we're able to do that. All right? And they explained it in here, again, probably better than I just did. All right, good time to take a break then. It is 8:49, I'm going to give you an extended break. Let's come back, please, at 9:05. All right?